There is a fifth dimension beyond that which is known to man. It is a dimension as vast as space and as timeless as infinity. It is the middle ground between radio and bar talk, between commentary and recaps, and it lies between the pit of man's Netflix subscriptions and the summit of his binge-watching ability. This is the dimension of podcasting and the Twilight Zone. These are the Zone-i-Sodes. And now your hosts, Brandon Davis and Scott McFarland.
And hello to all of you out there in podcast world. This is the Front Row Movie Reviews. I'm your host, Brandon Davis, and this is the podcast for people who actually like movies and sometimes TV. But you've got two people here who do like TV. And this is the seventh of our Zone-i-Sodes episodes. And we're talking about The Lonely, which aired November 13th, 1959. And I have here with me...
Only the lonely. I don't know. I'm tone deaf. Hi, I'm Scott.
That's all right.
Whenever I hear the title, I think of that song. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's. I was waiting for one of us to make that reference, but
I'm the schmuck who did it. Yes.
And this is probably, I think, one of the most interesting episodes we're actually going to talk about here. Really, sort of a lot to break down and to discuss. But first, before we actually get into it, let me read Rod's opening narration here for this episode, though. Witness, if you will, a dungeon made out of mountains, salt flats, and sand that stretch to infinity. The dungeon has an inmate, James A. Corey, and this is his residence, a metal shack, an old touring car that squats in the sun and goes nowhere, for there is nowhere to go. For the record, let it be known that James A. Corey is a convicted criminal placed in solitary confinement. Confinement in this case stretches as far as the eye can see, because this particular dungeon is on an asteroid 9 million miles from the Earth. Now witness, if you will, a man's mind and body shriveling in the sun, a man dying of loneliness. So we got the scene set for us here. So Scott, give us the plot summary for this episode.
I'd love to. In the not too distant future, we have decided a lifetime in prison is just not harsh enough. So prisoners are sent to a distant asteroid to live out their days alone. This is where we find Corey, 4 years into a 50-year sentence for a murder he claims he did not commit. On one resupply run, Captain Allenby, a good man, leaves Corey an android woman to keep him company. Or as he calls it, a reboot. I don't know how he pronounces it, but it's weird. At first, Corey does not want anything to do with Alicia, the android, but she wins him over with her show of emotions. And over the next 11 months, Corey falls in love with her. That is when the captain returns to tell Corey that he has been pardoned, but they must leave immediately or they'll be marooned on the asteroid forever. And Alicia must stay behind because she's just too damn heavy, even if she's a skinny girl. Corey won't have it, so Allenby shoots Alicia in the face. Period. Corey then leaves with the ship, and Alicia is left on the asteroid to rust. The end.
Yep. Dr. Smith never did that to the robot on Lost in Space.
Danger, Will Robinson, danger! There's a carrot man loose. I'm going to reference the carrot guy as much as possible.
Oh man, yeah, but that's another podcast. Well, so Scott, what are your first impressions of this episode?
If I mentioned last week when I was wearing the same shirt, magic. I mentioned last week that I don't remember watching Escape Clause. I have seen The Lonely more than most any Twilight Zone episode ever, and I think mainly because it's in syndication a lot. And I think when I was younger, this was one of my favorite episodes, and yeah. I hadn't seen it in a while, so I was very interested when we got to this part of the episode list to see if it holds up now that I'm probably 10, 15 years older than the last time I saw it. And I think it doesn't as much as I thought it would. Okay. And we'll go into that more later on. I think the last 4 or 5 minutes kind of loses me. But I think younger Scott liked it because of the question of what is humanity.
Yeah.
Do androids dream of electric sheep and all of that good stuff? Which that movie is coming out this year too. But we'll get into it more. But this episode was very strong in my memory, and it's interesting to come revisit it now for the first time in a long time.
Okay, yeah, I this is one that I remember seeing as well, and I think I saw it when I was younger. Been a while since I'd seen it though. It really, the look of the episode is what gets me though. I love where they shot it. They shot it in Death Valley. I love the cinematography of it. Like you said, it builds up very well to the climax, and as you said though, the climax though doesn't quite hold up for you. I don't know. Maybe it's because I really hadn't watched it a whole lot, although I did remember it. I didn't know exactly what to compare it to. The episode worked for me. I enjoyed it. And I think once again, and we're gonna probably say this every episode, but the casting in this episode is superb. Jack Warden's one of my favorite actors from this era, and
era, that man kept acting until 2000 with the replacements.
Well, that's true.
He was in many an era. He was in not Child's Play, Problem Child 1 and 2. He was Big Ben. Now that's where I remember him from.
He's really good in
Grandpa.
He's really good in Heaven Can Wait with Warren Beatty, but he's also juror number 6 in 12 Angry Men.
Yeah, and that again, we've already hit one of the jurors, one of my favorite films of all time, and he's excellent in that as well.
Yeah, I think,
but it's not Problem Child.
Yeah, he's Jack Warden, though. I think we've seen another juror from 12 Angry Men in one of these episodes.
We did, and now I'm going to go backwards in time and get you his name. It was juror number 1.
Martin Balsam.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's why I keep
16 millimeter Shrine. I knew we had a 12 Angry Men discussion already. So.
It will not be the last juror, I'm sure.
I know that's okay. I'm going to keep account of all the jurors. We won't see Henry Fonda, but I want to see if we'll see anybody.
We've got Robbie the Robots, and we got jurors from 12 Angry Men. That's our 2 counts right now. Robbie's at 1, jurors are at 2. Robbie's losing.
2. but yeah, this episode has a really great feel to it, and also I love the music in this episode, and it's done by Bernard Herrmann, who was Hitchcock's main composer. So it's got really great stock here, and the interesting thing about this episode is, and I read it here. Let's see. Oh yeah, this was the first episode to actually be filmed after the pilot had aired. So by this time, Serling knew that his show, while not a ratings success, was a critical success. So he knew that what he was doing was at least latching on somewhere. So I think from here on out, you're going to see Serling have more of a confidence in terms of the writing, and of course he won't always make the correct choices, but I think from here on out, there'll be a confidence that we might not have seen in the first 6 episodes when he's been experimenting a little bit more.
I agree with you there.
So we talked about our first impressions, and we've talked a little bit about Jack Warden, but what do you think about the rest of the cast?
They do fine. Jean Marsh as Alicia isn't given much to work with, and I think that's one of the areas where it kind of could have been a little better for me. Is they obviously show that she can at least mimic emotion, and even Corey points out that she's basically an extension of him. She's starting to repeat his words. She's loving what he loves. So she's not a full-blown AI. She's more of a, just a robot, to put it mildly. So she plays it that way. So I think she does fine. I really do like John Denner as Captain Allenby. I think he does that well because his job is to be the one person who cares, his two other co-pilots are dickheads, so it helps out there too. But not as dickish as Walter from last episode, but they're still
No.
dicks. There's a dick scale, and they're low and Walter's high.
Yeah,
But,
Walter's high.
yeah, but he does a really good job, and he seems to me, even when he's talking to Warden, and they obviously are about the same age, but he seems like a father figure, even to Corey. And Corey kind of looks up to him, and that one scene where Corey Warden looks out the window and says, "I don't even care what's in the crate, but thank you anyway. Thank you for being a decent human being." And I think that they play that well, and Denner gives you that impression that he is a decent human being.
Yeah, actually, something that I didn't. Of course, when I was younger, I didn't make the connection. But as I was watching the episode, one of the other two, I said, "Okay, I recognize this guy," and I'm not sure, and it's the one who plays Adams, who's the bigger jerk of the two.
Brandon,
And
Brandon will use jerk because he likes to be nice. I'll say dick.
is played by Ted Knight, who most famously in the 70s was Ted Baxter on Mary Tyler Moore Show. So really, so was playing little bit parts here in television. But yeah, Jean Marsh, she does well with what she's given. Yeah, I wish they had given her a little more to do, just to see how their relationship develops a little bit more, because you don't really see, time passes, and we don't really get to see the full scope of how he comes to care for her. I do really enjoy the scene where first he's annoyed with her and doesn't want to have anything to do with her, and slowly, little by little, she sort of starts to gain his trust a little bit more. I like the build of that scene. I think that's the strongest sequence in the episode. But yeah, the rest of them, like you said, John Daner, who plays Allenby, I really do like that, because we've seen a lot of other authority figures in some of these episodes who really aren't as humane, and so to give us this kind of character who is humane, even to this convict, I think is a really, really good choice for this episode. But for me, the strongest part of this episode, like I mentioned before, is just the setting and the way it's shot, and the world that they create, and just the idea that, oh man, maybe in the future, prisoners will be sent to far off planets somewhere or whatever. It's just an interesting idea.
And we thought our penitentiary system was expensive now. We're going to use all this fuel to drop one old dude off on an asteroid. And then, by the way, we don't have enough fuel to get off the asteroid unless we have only 15 pounds to carry along with the guy. But the other time we can bring him a car. And this isn't like, an aluminum DeLorean. This is an old Model T made out of steel, 4,000-pound car.
Yeah.
They use a lot of fuel. And that's probably why they had old football helmets as their astronaut helmets, because that's all they could afford.
Probably.
But, for me, one of my favorite old-time science fiction authors is Isaac Asimov, which for most people that's the way it is. And you can tell that Rod was at least borrowing from Asimov, especially in the beginning, not in the beginning, but about midway through the episode, when Corey originally rejects Alicia, and Alicia gains his trust by first saying, "You hurt me, I can feel," and then by crying, and that's when he realizes, okay, this android could very well be a person, and I should treat her with the same respect that I treat Allenby, and the same respect that Allenby treats me. At that point, this episode is one of the best episodes the Twilight Zone puts out. It's amazing because they're starting to take that deeper turn into what is humanity. Is it flesh and bone, or is it consciousness? And what are the differences? And then the episode starts to fall off the cliff of that question, because either Rod doesn't realize he's asking the question, or he doesn't care that he's asking the question because he never answers it. he never tries to answer it. So the 11 months montage is Corey saying, no, she really is just kind of doing what she needs to do in her programming. So there's not much there. And then when we have the flip side, where maybe even if the android isn't truly aware, she is making Corey a better person for wanting to stay with her. But that isn't really fleshed out either because, again, as I jokingly referred to in the synopsis, Allenby just blows her away, and immediately Corey's like, oh, okay, she's a robot, let's go. And I think this episode needed to be willing to go a little bit farther, and maybe even if you had Alicia, instead of standing there staring at the gun, not caring, maybe if you even just had her say no, just one little showing that she has a little bit of self-awareness and self, just a need to survive. I think this episode would have been miles ahead of where it is. And I think that's just a missed opportunity. Still a really good episode, but I think that's where adult Scott and younger Scott kind of diverges. I'm asking for a little bit more, and I don't get it.
That is sort of the one thought I had as we ended this. I said everything's kind of wrapped up a little too tidy at the end. I felt like, she was okay with having her head blown off, and he was okay kind of going off without her. But it's sort of taking the theme from Where Is Everybody in the pilot, sort of this this loneliness theme that we're going to see a lot more throughout the rest of the series, and Serling is adding another element to it. But I think we'll see it, like I said, played out a lot better in future episodes and future seasons, but he's still tweaking this idea. But as I said, though, Serling really is showing a lot more confidence in just his execution in this episode. He's saying, you may like what I'm doing, you may not, but here it is. I'm not gonna sort of tiptoe anymore. But yeah, like you said, I can, now that you mention it, I can see Asimov's influence in this episode, and there's just images from this episode. I remember, him sitting in the car, and I remember, the two of them sitting up, looking at the sky, and things like that. There's really cinematic things going on now in these episodes.
I'm glad you hit on that, them looking at the stars, because that was another one where the episode almost went there where I'm trying to take it, where 60 years later I wish it would have gone, is when she starts asking what stars are up there. Because that shows a little bit of, I'm not just programmed here to take in information, I'm trying to gather as well. Again, I wish it would have taken one more step. But you're right, the cinematography is great in this episode, especially since they don't have much to work with. I mean, it's freaking Death Valley, but they do a wonderful job of finding different rock formations, different areas to shoot. Even on the shoestring budget they're on, the rocket ship landing is decent for the 1959. I joke about the football helmets, but at least they had some kind of set dressing.
Yeah, I just and Warden, he really is great at sort of playing this everyman. You care about him from the very beginning. And it's so, of course, going from David Wayne in the last episode, who, you have no emotional connection to. You really do feel for this guy the whole episode, even though, like I said, in the final scene, it sort of gets wrapped up a little too tidy.
Well, and this is the second time I've seen parody from one episode to the next. We had the nostalgia theme for 2 episodes, and now we've got the what is it like to live eternity alone type thing. First with Escape Clause, him just realizing that he's going to have to spend eternity, or whatever his eternity is, in a prison cell, and realizing he can't hack it, so he just immediately quits before it even happens, to where here Corey is actually having to live that eternity of hell on his own. And I love the scene where Warden is kind of frantically walking around his little enclave because he's trying to get Allenby just to play a game of cards, or play a
Yeah.
little bit of chess, and just saying, every single day I wake up wondering if this is the last day I'm going to be sane. And every one of those
Oh,
days
yeah.
I tell myself, live one more day and be sane one more day. And then he kind of looks down, and it's really good acting. He says, I can't do that for 46 more years. And
Oh,
it's
yeah.
really good. It's really good acting. It's really good script too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's Serling's also a master of dialogue, and it just amazes me that he was able to pen all this stuff in such a short amount of time. All these scripts in this first year, he wrote the majority of them, if not all, and really starting now to come into his own. Any other thoughts about the episode before we
No,
get into the
I think I've
final
beat this
thoughts?
horse. I think I've beat this horse to death. I think I'm good.
All right. Well, before we close here, we got to get into our last bit here, which, if you have just joined us and haven't listened to the previous episodes that we've done, we rank these episodes by our own sort of scale. We're only comparing Twilight Zone episodes against each other, and we have our scale where a 10 is the absolute best quality. 5, just an average. If you were to get a 5, in school, it would be failing. Not here. It's just sort of your average Twilight Zone episode and then we go to 1, which is absolutely terrible. But Scott, where do you put this episode?
I would still say, even though it falls off a cliff at the end, it is an above average episode. So I'm going to give it a 6. I think it's a solid 6. I think it's one of the better ones in the series, but we have a lot of much better ones to come. And not to give too much away, but we're going to have higher scores next week.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we're going to get to the cream of the crop next week. But this one, I think I'm going to have to actually, we're going to really disagree one of these days, and I'm looking forward to that. But I actually was going to give this one a 6 as well, because I sort of put this one up with 16 millimeter Shrine, because that's the same score I gave it, where I said this one really sort of tugs at your heart a little bit, and if it can do that, it's above average to me. Although I don't quite consider it cream of the crop episodes, which we've already given an episode of 10 so far, and we'll see if we can add to that list next week, maybe. Not to give anything away, but final thoughts on this episode, though.
My final thought is we are now 4.5% all the way through the Twilight Zone. We're moving incrementally 1 percentage point at a time. But no, I think it's very interesting for me to be watching these in order, probably for the first time ever, and not watching them like a binge on a marathon, but giving them each their due. And looking at them with a critical eye. It's a fun experience. I'm enjoying it.
Awesome. Yeah, I am too. And we're only gonna go up from here. I'm just looking ahead to some of the ones we're going to be talking about, and a lot of fun discussions to come.
I think the upcoming month is going to be a really good discussion after good discussion, because some of the biggest episodes that people remember all come in a bunch here pretty quick.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So while I actually get Rod's final words for this episode here, do a little plugging for us, Scott.
You can find us at thefrontrowmoviereviews.com and on all your social media platforms by searching the Front Row Movie Reviews. If you're watching this on YouTube, thank you. And make sure that you like and subscribe to us. We have our show here, but we also have Brandon's Classics, My Flashbacks. We have full disclosure of current movies. We just did one a few weeks ago about Logan. We're probably going to be doing one about, actually, I got to figure out dates here. We probably already did one about Power Rangers. This is what happens when we record a few weeks early. But we also want to hear from you. I've heard some really fun things. I mean, some people have already gotten a hold of me and said, here's my favorite episode. And I'm looking forward to you guys talking about it. And hopefully we'll get some of those folks on here to talk about their favorite episodes too.
Yeah.
So if you want to talk about your favorite episode, and it's coming up pretty soon, let us know and we will get you on here, because if there's anything better than Brandon and I talking to each other for a half an hour, it's having somebody else to talk to.
Yeah.
Brandon's my Alicia, and sooner or later I'm going to have to blast him in the face. So you need to, or vice versa.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
And if you finally, if you're listening to us on your podcast platform, please also be sure to subscribe to us as well. We love to see the downloads go up every month, and it's a fun experience to see more people latching onto this, and we really appreciate it. And if you don't like us, just help us out anyway. We're nice guys. Hit subscribe and like anyway, and you can just delete us. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's do Rod's final words here for this episode. On a microscopic piece of sand that floats through space is a fragment of a man's life. Left to rust is the place he lived in and the machines he used. Without use, they will disintegrate from the wind and the sand and the years that act upon them. All of Mr. Corey's machines, including the one made in his image, kept alive by love, but now obsolete in the Twilight Zone. So that pretty much wraps it up for the Lonely here. And next week, we've hinted at it, but we're going to get to what I think a lot of people consider, if not the best, one of the top 2 or 3 best Twilight Zone episodes ever.
And it stars the Penguin.
The Penguin.
I'll get you, Batman.
Or Mickey, if you listen to our Rocky classics.
Get a rock. No, I can't do Burgess Meredith at all. I can't do any voices at all. I can't even do my own voice. Okay.
So
I am lonely. I understand.
That's all right. We'll try. Well, then we'll be even lonelier next week. There's no one to keep us company next week. Oh, except a few thousand books, but we'll talk about that more next week.
If only we had an optometrist. If only.
So for episode 7 of Zone-i-Sodes, I am Brandon Davis.
And I'm Scott McFarlane, and I have no idea what I'm doing here.
And we will hopefully see you on the couch.
We may need to be on the couch after we get done with this.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Zone-i-Sodes. Zone-i-Sodes is a special presentation of the Front Row Movie Reviews podcast. For more information, go to www.thefrontrowmoviereviews.com.